Welcome to the Executive Pulse with AIHE podcast. I'm Dr. Sydney Chandrasiri, Chief Executive of the Australian Institute of Health Executives. Now, this is our very first episode in this podcast, and before we dive into today's topic, I want to set the scene for what the Executive Pulse podcast will stand for, because this isn't going to be just another healthcare leadership podcast. At AIHE, we're about getting to the heart of leadership, about raising the real issues that impact healthcare leaders, about asking the challenging questions, and about giving you the insights, analysis, and strategies that helps you not only just keep up, but stay ahead of the curve and lead with integrity and courage. So, in today's episode, I'd like to talk about something that's obviously quite topical, something that's no longer this distant future healthcare issue. And whether we're ready or not, it's already here and reshaping the way our healthcare teams make decisions. I'm talking about AI, but more specifically about AI in multidisciplinary teams. Now, if you're a healthcare leader, you've probably sat through more AI presentations than you can count. Faster diagnoses, predictive insights, reduced admin. Yes, it all sounds great, but really, all of that isn't new information anymore, is it? The new leadership challenge that's coming is actually this. What happens when AI stops being just a tool in the background and starts becoming an active voice in your team's decision making? Now, that's when the challenge moves from technology to leadership. So let's start by looking closer to home. Think about the teams you lead, the doctors, the nurses, allied health professionals, administrators. They're trained to collaborate with people, to debate, to challenge, to reach consensus as a group of humans. Now, what happens when an algorithm joins that conversation? Here in Australia, it's no longer hypothetical. This is already happening. We know that imaging pilots are using AI to pick up cancers earlier than the human eye can detect, for example, and hospitals are trialing predictive analytics to detect patient deterioration before it becomes obvious at the bedside. And primary care practices are experimenting with AI tools that flag high-risk patients who may otherwise slip through the cracks. And globally, we know that this trend is accelerating as well. There was this recent study involving oncology multidisciplinary team meetings that really stood out to me. The researchers of this study looked at how clinicians interacted with AI recommendations within that MDT setting, and what they found was really quite interesting. They found that even though AI didn't replace human expertise, it did shape the discussion. When it makes a recommendation, it influenced the dialogue. It validated the decisions that were being made. And that's the key, because AI is not just staying neutral as a background tool. When it makes a recommendation, it's actively influencing the decision making in the room. So if we paused on what this means, well, it raises all sorts of questions, and not just IT questions, but governance questions. Most importantly, around accountability for the final decision making. Because if a clinician's thinking is being influenced by a machine, then who holds the accountability for the consequences of that decision that's being made? So as you can see, these are not just IT questions, they're governance questions. And most of our healthcare boards, health executive teams and leadership teams, we don't have the practical frameworks that can provide the answers to these yet. And what's more, there is this issue of the culture gap. Now, I'd argue the biggest risk of AI in healthcare isn't that the technology fails. The biggest risk is that the culture will make it fail. Because if we look back, for example, at the rollout of My Health Record, technically it worked, but adoption stalled because clinicians and patients weren't fully brought into the why and the how. And as a result of that, it's considered that the technology failed. That trust that is essential for buy-in wasn't built from the outset. And without trust, there is no adoption, and the best tech in the world will make absolutely no difference. So if we consider a probable scenario, imagine an AI system that flags early signs of sepsis in a patient, for example. A junior nurse may see that alert, but then hesitate to respond because they're thinking, should I trust my own judgment or what this non-human is flagging? Similarly, a doctor who might be very confident in their own experience could just easily dismiss it, assuming that, it's probably just another false alarm. Now, in this scenario, the AI worked exactly as it was designed to, but the team, because of their inherent conditioning, didn't. So where does that then leave the value add and the return on investment that you're expecting to get from this new technology? And that's the risk that is posed by the culture gap. Because if AI were to flag something critical in your hospital today, how confident are you that your team knows how to respond? AI is only effective if people know how to question it, when to trust it, and where they need to balance it with their own expertise. And that brings us to the issue of governance. Our healthcare governance systems and processes have been built around people. Yes, we have the policies, escalation pathways, codes of conduct, and these have all been designed for humans. But now we're entering a world where one of the most influential voices in the room isn't human at all. And that's a profound shift. So as healthcare leaders, we need to start asking new questions, like how do we integrate AI into team dynamics without undermining professional clinician judgment? How do we stop clinicians from blindly deferring to AI outputs or ignoring them altogether? And as I mentioned, most importantly, what is accountability going to look like when part of a clinical decision comes from a system rather than a person? Think about the systems that you already have: escalation protocols, peer review processes, morbidity and mortality meetings. They're all designed for human decisions and human performance. Now, when a machine starts to play a role in influencing those decisions, where does that accountability then sit? And remember that AI isn't staying within the confines of just radiology or pathology either. It's moving into mental health triaging, population health, virtual care. And this isn't, 5 or 10 years away. It's happening right now. So there's a lot at stake if we get this wrong, because AI could fracture your clinical teams. It could widen existing silos, create mistrust between people, and slow down decision-making even further. But worst case scenario, it could lead to actual patient harm. But if we can get it right, well, the benefits are quite extraordinary, isn't it? It could relieve pressure on already stretched staff. It could sharpen the decision-making and reduce delays. It could give your teams the confidence to act earlier with better evidence. And most importantly, it could improve the clinical and functional outcomes for patients. And that's the prize. So if you're listening as a healthcare executive, board director, or a health leader, you might be thinking, well, where should I even begin? Let me offer you 4 starting points. First, treat AI as a governance challenge and not just as an IT project. Too many organizations still stuff AI under the CIO's portfolio, but this isn't about servers and algorithms and data flows. It's about accountability, about ethics, and it's about safety. Second, invest in your culture. Support your staff so they know exactly how and when to work with AI, not fear it. And that means investing in training, open dialogue, and creating safe spaces where staff can raise concerns about AI decisions without any judgment. Third, be absolutely clear on accountability. If an AI system influences any aspect of a clinical decision, there cannot be any grey zones about who is responsible. The patients need to know who, staff need to know who, and your leadership teams need to know who. And fourth, communicate openly with your staff and with your patients. Be transparent about what AI can do, just as importantly as what it can't, because over-promising destroys trust faster than under-delivering. So here's the reality. AI is already at the door of every healthcare organization. The question isn't if it's going to join your teams. The question is whether your culture and governance will be ready for it when it does. We do know that now AI will not replace clinicians in multidisciplinary care teams, at least not anytime soon, but it will become another voice in the conversation, and quite possibly a very influential one. And our roles as health leaders is to make sure that voice strengthens the standard of care that's delivered rather than destabilizing it. So here's my challenge to you as we wrap up this episode. If AI joined your care team tomorrow, what's the one change you'd need to make in your culture, in your governance, or in your communication to be ready for it? Think about it, talk about it with your teams, because the organizations that prepare now won't just adopt AI. They'll be the ones who successfully integrated it into the very fabric of how their healthcare teams work. Thanks for listening. Until next time, stay curious, stay courageous, and keep leading the way in healthcare.